So I think it's about time I made some sort of video like this. So, budget 3x3 comparison. Now, everybody obviously knows the definition of a budget 3x3. As even Google is wise enough to say, a 3x3 that is under £10, that's bitcubing.org. I mean, it says it right there. You can read for yourself. So, the four I've actually chosen to compare, the only four that really need comparing, are the Yushin Little Magic M, which is completely different to the original Yushin Little Magic in design. Don't know why they just called it the same thing. They could have easily made a new brand or something, but they didn't. QiYi MS 3x3, RS3M 2020, and Meilong M. So, I could have included things like the QiYi Warrior S when magnetized, because that would, I mean, that's a really good option if you're looking for something that absolutely won't pop. And I think we do actually have a neutrino QiYi Warrior SM, but it's not very popular at all. And I could have considered the Meilong V2M, but no, I'm not going to include it with this lot. Not sure if there are any others that could be considered to include, but I don't think so. Suppose no, even the Monster Go series, I mean, that wouldn't be £10 if we even sold it. So, no, I think these are the only four worth considering. So, for popularity, at the moment, the least popular is the Yushin Little Magic M, which is a bit disappointing, to be honest, because it's actually quite a nice cube, but not many people seem to want it at the moment for some reason. Second least popular is the Meilong M, quite closely followed by the second most popular, the QiYi MS, and the far outlier in terms of most popular budget 3x3 is the RS3M 2020, and I think that's repeated across most cube stores. Obviously, you can get into all the details of obviously things like search engines and links and all sorts of things like that, and video popularity has a huge impact, so popularity isn't everything and doesn't even necessarily determine the actual popularity of a cube. It's just how well it sells. Corner cutting, no real hierarchy. All three of these can basically do anything you want. There's not really any weak spots. If it can't do a normal corner cutting, it will do a reverse. This one, unfortunately, there's a slight weak spot there that it can't do anything, but it's quite small and it can do pretty much everything else. So no real issues with corner cutting these days, even on budget cubes. So for size, the smallest is the Meilong M at 55.5, then the RS3M 2020 at 55.6, Yushin Little Magic at 55.7, and QiYi MS 3x3 at 56.1. I suspect all these were meant to be 55, and this was meant to be 55.5, and this is meant to be 56. So something to bear in mind, but very minuscule differences between them, so nothing to worry about, I would say. Magnet strength, well, it's quite hard to tell, but I think this is probably right. I think the QiYi MS 3x3 has the strongest, closely followed by the Meilong M. I'm not sure about these two though. I think the Yushin Little Magic is in the middle, and I'm pretty sure the RS3M 2020 has the weakest. Lots of people have complained about it having pretty weak magnets. Obviously we do have a neutrino version which contains the extra 24 magnets in the edges, but you can also do that yourself, just take apart the edge, except when it's difficult to take apart the edge and you need a load of scissors to pry it open at the side, like that. Yeah, that happens. You have been warned. So maybe get me to do it for you if you want to avoid that. So in case anybody cares, volume, I would say the QiYi MS 3x3 is the loudest, then the RS3M 2020, then the Yushin Little Magic 3x3, and the quietest is the Meilong M. Not sure why you'd need that, other than maybe cubing in Zoom classes, maybe. So for speed, I would say the Meilong M is definitely the slowest at the moment. That could change with setup, but I don't think it would change drastically. The QiYi MS then, although there's quite a big divide here. The YLM Magic I'm putting in second to the RS3M 2020. However, once the RS3M 2020 has stronger magnets, or if you just get a YLM Magic M out of the box, it's a lot faster. So it takes a bit of breaking in to slow down to a more controllable speed. So if you want a really fast cube out of the box, then this is something to consider, and I suspect with the right lubrication you can keep it that fast. So the RS3M 2020 is very nice and fast, but also retains a decent stability, so it's a pretty good option. And the speed of the QiYi MS is pretty normal, it's pretty controllable, and obviously, yeah, it just lines up in place. The issue is it just feels different. It's got a more bumpy feel. You can hear the difference in turning there. So I mean, it's a reasonable speed, but it's quite weird in its feel. So it's not for everyone. Definitely not smooth like the QiYi MS 2x2 for some reason. But then the 4x4 and 5x5 feel pretty similar to this. For stability, it's quite difficult. They're all pretty stable cubes. I mean, the Meilong M being quite slow is probably the most stable, but I mean, that comes at a big cost in terms of speed. The QiYi MS is quite stable, but then it's got that weird feeling to it, so okay if you like that. I did have one problem with the YLM Magic recently, in that trying to force a difficult corner cut can potentially lead to pops, although that's very rare, and obviously that was me deliberately trying to force it to do that. I don't think that's likely to happen in Zolves. Very rare. RS3M 2020, I mean, it's stable enough. It's really difficult really to put these into any sort of hierarchy. So there we have it. So for the Meilong M, it feels quite smooth and a bit slower than the other cubes, but it's nice and controllable, and I can get some pretty good times on it. Obviously, it's the magnetic version of the Meilong M, which is much cheaper, so if you want, it's the only one you can get at speakingme.org and get the magnets and magnetize. So if you want to magnetize it yourself, this is the recommended one to get. The QiYi MS 3x3 is pretty smooth and fast, but has that weird bumpy feel and is very loud, the loudest of the four. So wouldn't recommend it for cubing under the desk in Zoom classes or any other video classes. As you can hear, it's very, very loud. But that's not to subtract from its performance, which is pretty nice. The YLM Magic 3x3M I think is quite underrated. It hasn't been that popular, but actually it does feel pretty nice. It's a bit too fast out of the box, but once set up well and broken in, it slows down to a more controllable speed and actually does feel quite nice. The RS3M 2020 is by far the most popular, and there's no real reason to have a problem with that. It is a very nice cube, especially when the extra magnets are added, just to aid the stability a bit, because yeah, they are pretty weak. But even without them, it's still an excellent cube, and I can definitely see why it's the most popular. So as for my averages, I will have the times up on the screen now. So shortly before making this video, I did an average of 5 on each cube, except I switched between the cubes one after another as to not mix it up. So if I was warmed up on the last one, maybe I'd get a better average. I made sure that wouldn't happen. So the results are in 4th place with an average of 11.09 was the QiYi MS 3x3. In 3rd place with an average of 10.83 was the Yushin Little Magic 3x3. In 2nd place with an average of 10.62 was the Meilong 3M. And in 1st place with an average of 10.22 and a very nice 7.62 single was the RS3M 2020. Obviously this is no real way to compare, just an average of 5 is not going to determine much at all, but it's something to mention. I mean, I was fastest with the RS3M 2020, so I think that's the one I'm going to go with for now. Oh, look, I think there might be some repulsion between these two cubes. That's interesting. Anyway, yeah. The 7.62 was an OLL skip, so obviously that's going to have an impact, but overall, pretty good times. And an 8.76 with the Meilong M. I was pretty pleased with these. And in fact, on all 4 cubes, the first solve was sub 10, which is very interesting. But yeah, it's definitely a repulsion. Look, if I push the QiYi MS towards the Yushin Little Magic, it goes away. Moves out of the way. Right. Oh, it's not this time. No, it is. Yeah. Who knows why that's happening.